window line of 450 ohms. Oh, wait. Let's pick 90 ohms. Okay, 90 goes into 450. Yes, I'm
90 on
cheating.
the antenna, on the dipole.
On the feed point of the dipole.
Okay.
I want to match the window line impedance to the impedance of the feed point. So I need a balance, don't I? Because, say this is 50 ohms and this is 450 ohms, I need a 9-to-1 balance. So it's, this is 9, the other side is 1. So I'm taking 9 and I'm basically building a transformer where 9 times go in one side and 1 times come out the other side. And that's a voltage balance. And you're matching those two. If you want to isolate RF from getting into your shack, you can use a 1-to-1. So you feed with 50 ohms, you go into a 1-to-1 balance, comes out to the feed point on your antenna, and the RF won't come back. It will go through to the antenna and radiate, and it won't tend to bounce back into your shack if you've made the mistake of making your feed line too long or too short, or making it just right so all the power comes back. So, did you sign me in? I think I'm officially here.
Yes, I signed you in.
Oh, thank you.
As the instructor.
You don't even want to know. Here, let's see now. What was the other question? Current balance. I'm not quite sure why they use current balance. There are these arguments on lists that I'm on, and it gets to the point where even the people with opinions are confused, and they have multiple opinions. I stick with voltage balance because I understand them, and I can think of it as a transformer. And that's all I want. Transformer, and even an isolation transformer, so if I want to isolate the RF from the shack.
That's pretty much what I was working with.
The choke balun is just to block the RF from coming back into the shack. And on a J-pole, I was always on, I made a copper cactus J-pole, just soldered up some copper. And I put in my RG8 6-inch, well actually I made as many coils as I could, as tight as I could, and it came about this size. It's really hard to get that big stuff any tighter. And it seemed to keep the RF out of the shack.
Yep.
Sir.
I put up a Cobra, a folded dipole antenna, and the manufacturer said you should use a current balance with that. And as a matter of fact, I didn't have one at the time. I used a voltage balance, and it seemed to tune and work very nicely. Well, I got a current balance and put that in. It did not tune well at all.
It could be that they told you the wrong thing.
Well, it could be, but that was the manufacturer. So
they're not infallible.
Anyway, what I did was I finally ran the ladder line right through my MFJ tuner, and I don't know what the balance is in that, and they don't tell you what kind of a balance, what kind of a using the internal one. And I suppose it's a voltage balance, but I'm not sure.
I took mine apart because all MFJ equipment is not constructed. The circuits are good, but sometimes the parts are not bolted down as well. And when you hear rod, I just took it apart and I looked at the circuit as I.
Yeah.
And my roller inductor also needs to have some cardboard between, because there gets to be some arcing and it gets to be carbon. So you run some paper through there to clean it up. And it is a voltage balance inside of my MFJ. 450, I think it is. And Ben, you brought, that's an MFJ, isn't it?
Yes, this tuner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we take it apart?
Yeah, where's the screwdriver?
Actually, you wouldn't get it apart with the screwdriver. You had a very small hex head.
And Ernie, you can make your own balance.
Yeah, I've looked into that. I haven't done it, but I did.
Oh, it's over here.
Into that.
Go to the Amadon webpage, AMIDON, and they'll tell you everything about ferrites and toroids that you need to know to figure out how many turns you need to get how many microfarad or millihenries or microhenries.
Okay, the antenna book says that a choke type balun, which is made from a coil of wire like that at the base of the feed point, is referred to as a current balun,
Okay.
since it has the hybrid properties of a tightly coupled transmission line transformer, 1-to-1, and a coil.
Okay, that makes sense. And then that also makes sense when I described this very same twisting effect around my toroid.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere local we can get ferrites and toroids without having to go mail order?
How about
I normally order them from other people that are California, and you get kits of them.
Yeah, I've seen some of the prices on some of the kits, and it varies widely. And
Oh.
shipping and handling is a new way to soak it.
Has some, but not very big.
Right, that's what I was going to say. I got this here. This is a T52.
It's not as big as I got, I think.
Yeah, I think so. This is about $2, I think.
Norvac?
Yeah. They don't have a lot of them, but they do have ferrites and they do have the iron. So, and then if you go to Amazon's site, you get the little worksheet, and you can figure out if you don't have the right one, you can change the number of turns.
Yeah, it's got the conversions and everything.
It'll also tell you how long a piece of wire for how many turns. I normally do it manually by putting a turn on there and measuring it. But you don't want to put on 80 turns and realize that you're 1 inch too short, because you have to unwind all of that. But really, it's not difficult to make these things.
Yeah.
And this was not in the circuit diagram that I saw the circuit diagram and I said, well, I can modify this, I can modify this. I don't have this in my junk box, so I got out my calculator and the Amazon stuff and I made this. So you don't need to follow the circuits. It's kind of like cooking. Right.
You put power on it?
A little bit of this.
That's right.
Could you smack him? Let's see now.
Or you go down the common definition of a practical antenna is one that works.
That's practical as you can get. I thought you were a Yankee. Okay, here's a little bit about the Yagi Uda's feed point. The shortened part here is where the feed point is on the radiating element. If you'll notice, it's slightly shorter than the resonance dipole to the left. And this is just a way of looking at what you have is a parallel inductance and a series capacitance. We're also going to start jumping into tuners now, and you'll see this is almost exactly the circuit that you're going to get in your tuners. But we need to know, this one took me the longest time, and it seems to be opinion oriented. The characteristic impedance of a vertical, quarter wave vertical, is between 38 and 100 ohms. That's what they said. I thought it was between 38 and 72 ohms, but it depends on who you read. 5/8 vertical is about the same, but I couldn't find any exact numbers for that. A J-pole, depending upon exactly where you feed it on this matching stub, can be anywhere from 0 down at the very point where these two elements join, can be 0 up to where you match exactly your feed line. So you normally use an antenna analyzer. When you homebrew these things, you use an antenna analyzer and you move your feed point until you've gotten rid of everything except the resistive component. So that's how you make a J-pole. But we're not quite there yet. Half-wave dipole, I saw anywhere from 50 ohms to 90 ohms. Half-wave loop, one of my favorite antennas, is about 100 ohms. So you do need a little bit of a 2-to-1 balance here. Now, antenna tuners. Remember back here, I showed you there's the L, the inductive component, and C, the capacitive component. The first tuner that we come to is called an LC tuner. And it's, when we get to the circuits, a page or two later, you will see exactly that. In the old tube rigs, the output was called a pi tuner. So you were matching the antenna to the final amplifier. T-tuner is another one. In-fed half-wave tuner is specialized for just the in-fed half-wave antenna. And I'm getting into some QRP stuff with the Z-Mesh and the in-fed half-wave tuner because, well, that's kind of what I do. I like QRP. I like throwing an antenna up and working people with my rig.